this video I'm going to show you how to make kombucha, which is a probiotic soda or tea drink that carbonates naturally. And one of the things that I like about it, because of that, it helps many people to get off soda. But there are so many benefits to having probiotic foods like this for physical and mental health. It helps with your immunity and digestion, pain and inflammation. It even helps with anxiety and depression. Making kombucha is actually surprisingly easy. All you need to do is make a gallon of tea, add sugar to it, add the Scoby, which is yeast and bacteria that create the probiotics, let it sit for 2 weeks, then you flavor it and bottle it. That's the whole process. So in order to do that, all you need is a stock pot as far as equipment. You need some glass bottles, or you could do it in a mason jar, just something that seals. You need a funnel, a measuring cup, and a glass jar, about a gallon or 2 gallons, depending on how much you make, to let the tea ferment in. As far as ingredients, all you need is sugar and organic tea, organic sugar as well, and pure water. Now the reason you want to use pure water and organics is because chlorine, as well as pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, will kill the bacteria that you're trying to create. So because the main part of this is the probiotics, you really want to go organic and pure water. Now the teas you can use, there's a variety. Most recipes call for your base tea to be black tea because it has the nutrients, nitrogen, and tannins your Scoby needs. And I mix black with 1/3 oolong tea. But I also like to use yerba mate as the base because it's also full of nutrients but is less acidic. But it is best to use secondary tea like green, white, oolong, or pu'er tea with this, since those will provide the tannins and nitrogen yerba mate is lacking. And you can put herbs in there as well, but you only want to use about 25% herbs in there, whereas flowered teas are more what you want to put in there. You want to avoid other teas like, or I should say leaf teas, not flower teas. You want to avoid other teas like Earl Grey or any flavored teas because they have oils in it, and that can get in the way of the fermentation process. But I'm going to have all of this on the blog at theartofunity.com, what teas I recommend and where to get them, as well as different recipes on how to do this. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is boil water for the tea. The recipe calls for 1 cup of organic sugar and 12 grams of tea, or 8 tea bags. So once the water boils, add 12 grams of actual tea, or 8 tea bags, 1 cup of the organic sugar, and let that steep for at least 15 to 20 minutes. The tea has to completely cool because you're going to be putting a Scoby, which is live bacteria, in it. So if the tea is too hot, it will kill it immediately, and then you won't have any probiotics in there. So one trick in order to do that is you put half the amount of water that you need to boil with the tea bags, you put the other half of the water in the refrigerator, and then after it cools for a little bit and steeps for 20 minutes, then you take the hot water and pour it into the cold water. You want to be sure that this is room temperature. Now once your tea cools, what you're going to do is put the Scoby along with the starter tea in there. And what the starter tea is kombucha from your last batch. And if this is your first time, you can buy a kombucha in the store, buy an original version without flavoring, or if you can't get a hold of that, then you can use white vinegar. And what the starter tea or the vinegar does is it creates an acidic environment so that no bad bacteria can form in there. So now that the tea is cooled, we're going to put the Scoby and the starter tea in there. If you use your hands, put it the rough side down and make sure your hands are super clean. So once you have the Scoby inside the tea, what you're going to do is put a couple layers of a tightly woven fabric on top of it, and you can use paper towel or coffee filters are great, and then a cotton cloth on top of that, and then I'll put a rubber band and seal that around. The reason you're doing that is because the carbonation tends to attract fruit flies. And if fruit flies get into your kombucha, they could lay eggs in the Scoby, and then you have to throw it out. So this allows air to get in, which the Scoby needs to breathe, but it doesn't seal it. So for example, I can't use this lid because it seals it, and then no air will get in. So you have to use tightly woven fabric, and a cheesecloth won't do it, for example, because that is enough room for the fruit flies to get in there. Now, you're going to store it in a cabinet outside of the sun at room temperature for 2 weeks. You can store it for longer, for up to 30 days, but if you do that, it becomes more vinegary. So after about 10 days, you could start tasting it to see if it's to your liking, and then we start the second ferment. You'll see the Scoby floating on top or at the bottom, sometimes it'll be sideways, and you're going to see also brown stringy things coming off the bottom. This is all signs of healthy fermentation, and it's good. It also depends on what the temperature is where you're at. So you want to have this between 68 and 85 degrees. Any hotter than that, it's going to ferment a lot faster, but it's going to taste vinegary. So there'll be more probiotics, but it's not going to taste as good. If it's cooler than that, then it will seriously halt the fermentation process, and you'll have to leave it in there for longer. So I'm going to have a lot of information in the blog at theartofunity.com with regard to recipes, as well as making a second ferment, and how to flavor it the way you like it, and frequently asked questions for people who are making this especially new. There'll also be links as to where to buy the equipment and the ingredients that you need to get this. So that's pretty much everything you need in order to make regular flavor kombucha. And in part 2, now that this is sat for 10 days, what I'm going to do is show you how to flavor it, carbonate it, and bottle it. So check out the second part to see how to finish this all up.